Hi guys, and welcome to the next episode of a small series of videos which I'm telling you something about economical news and the precious metals market. Today I want to talk a little bit about the real estate market in the US, and additionally at the end I will talk a little bit about the possibilities of investing in silver, because there's not only the possibility given to invest in my preferred metal in physical form, there are other forms which I will present you at the end of this video. But starting with this real estate market, I will tell you something about the commercial real estate. Why do I do this? Because we have probably, most of us, heard a lot about the foreclosures and the real estate problems and the decline of prices in the United States, but only based on the private housing sector. But there are not many people that are really focused or that pay attention to the real estate market, the commercial real estate market. And we have seen this August, we have seen a decline of in 3% of the prices in 1 month. And the prices of the real estate market from the high in 2007, prices have already gone down 50%. Why do I tell this interesting stuff? Because it's really relevant information to understand the problems of our financial system. Because the banks are are working in a system that's based on fraud, and it's really a big robbery going on at the moment. Why I'm saying this in harsh words, because last week we heard about $140 billion of bonuses that have been paid to the bankers in 2009, and this was a new all-time record. Imagine that we talked about the big financial crisis after the Lehman collapse, and 2 years later we already reached new all-time highs in the bonuses for bankers. How is this stuff possible? Normal citizens on the street won't probably understand that, because to get back to this real estate sector, it's to make a comparison, you can say the banks they changed the accounting standards after the crash and after 2007, so the banks don't have to correct the value of their commercial real estate in their books. So it's like a veggie dealer who's selling veggies, and he's got tons of rotten fruits in the cellar. But then there's some guy coming from abroad, or some guy from the legislation, or saying, oh wait a moment, you don't have to correct the value to $0 or $1. Just wait until it gets better, until the rotten food gets better. This is probably how you can understand what's going on, because we have seen a price decline in total. We are not talking about billions in this sector. We are already talking about trillions. And there are so many shopping malls and commercial buildings for offices, and they are empty. And if the banks would have the obligation to write down these assets, they wouldn't have any equity left, because the banks are working with a really high leverage. This is called leverage. You have got one euro on your bank account, and normally the bank is working, sometimes the Deutsche Bank, for example, it has got a leverage ratio, I think, about 1 to 60. That means for 1 euro of capital, of equity, they are lending 60. There are somewhere in credits, or somewhere there are 60 euros hanging around somewhere. And so if the prices of this 60 euros in the balance sheets would be reduced only by 10%, the whole equity would be gone. So the banks would be bankrupt. So the problem is this real estate, the commercial real estate sector, which nobody really, in the press, also in the mainstream press, you won't read some stuff about it. There's so enormous there are so enormous depreciations necessary that the banks, the whole banking sector would be bankrupt in a week. But like I told you, we are seeing a fraud system, and they just changed the accounting standards so that they don't have to write down the value of this assets, like this veggie dealer who hasn't got to correct the value of his rotten fruits and the seller to zero. And so the banks can go on working, and like the sun would still shine outside. And the bonuses they get paid, they get the amount of bonuses, they are related to the sums, to the equity sheet, to the balance sheets of the banks. It's not 100%. There's not 100% correlation, but the thing is, the income of the bankers is really 100% sure. It's a 100% sure deal, because the balance sheets have been growing enormously in the last decades, and this is the main problem of our finance system, that the amount of goods has been growing much slower than the amount of money. So I'm not sure exactly, but I once read an article that the amount of goods has been risen about 60% in the last 30 years in the world, but the amount of money has been risen 30 times. It means 3,000%. And what does it imply? It implies that the people working with money, whose incomes is based on the amount of money they are dealing with, is growing, because the amount of money is growing. So it's a 100% sure deal. So if somebody is saying, oh, the bankers are responsible for, they are all stupid, wouldn't say mother, but they're using the possibility that's given by the system. So the bankers, they are not they are doing fraud, but with this bonus system, it's a sure deal for them, because the amount of money is growing in the last years with enormous quantities. And so this is a thing how you can understand this. To come back to the real estate sector, we are speaking about, like I told you already, in the commercial real estate sector we are talking about trillions, and we are now at prices at levels from 2002. So we had this prices have been risen really fast in the first 7 years of this decade, the last decade, from 2000 to 2007, and afterwards we have seen an enormous crash, but you can't see this crash in the balance sheet. And in additional information to the private real estate sector, we have seen now 19 consecutive months with more than 300,000 requests for foreclosures for private houses. So that means every month there have been more than 300,000 requests for foreclosures. If you think about it, that in a normal house that's not one person affected, if you think that probably I would think in average that's around 3 persons affected with each foreclosure, there are around 1 million persons affected each month. So we have seen more than 300,000 foreclosures in nearly 20 consecutive months. That means 6 million requests with around 3 persons each. That means we have seen around, I would estimate that we have seen 20 million people already affected by this crisis, in real estate crisis in the United States. And if you think about that, the United States has got around 300 million inhabitants, so they're nearly 8% already affected by foreclosures in the United States, and it's an incredible amount of persons. And the wealth increase in the United States the last decades was mainly based in the rising prices of real estate. So the United States is getting poor. It's getting really poor and really strongly affected by this depreciation of prices. And and think about it, and think about this commercial. This is another bomb for this finance system, and the banks have no equity. They don't have sufficient equity to survive this depreciation in their balance sheets. So that's the story, and this is the reason for me to see that this system, which is based on confidence, but the confidence is it's just, but the system has no real values, and it's based on hot air and on hope and confidence and promises from bankers, from politicians, and this is the reason why I don't like this system anymore. But okay, this was enough for the real estate sector. Additionally, I wanted to tell